when Rabbani saw that the Shura Nizar, which is his force, is against him, and they want Krzai to replace him, then he vacated the seat.
أهلا بكم مشاهدينا الكرام، أنا طاهر بركي أحييكم وأقدم إليكم حلقة جديدة من برنامجكم الذاكرة السياسية نتابع فيها مع محمد عمر داود زاي وزير الداخلية الأفغاني الأسبق. أهلا بكم معنا مجددا معالي الوزير إلى هذه الحلقة. سوف تستهل لاحقا حياتك المهنية في أفغانستان الجديدة في 21 من أغسطس من عام 2003 رئيسا لموظفي القصر الرئاسي، لتنجو بذلك بأعجوبة من مكان اغتيال كان يمكن أن تكون فيه مكان سيرجيو دي ميلو المبعوث الأممي الراحل في العراق. كيف حصل ذلك وكيف شعرت عندما حصل ما حصل؟
I was working with United Nations based in Geneva, UNDP. And Saddam regime was removed by American invasion within 1 month or within days of completion of removal. The UN Secretary General issued a directive that all Arabic speaking at the first stage and all Muslims who are interested should move to Iraq to re-establish the UN offices or establish new UN offices in Iraq. So I was sent to Basra to establish the UN office with a team, obviously. Mm-hmm. We were quite a big team. And I did a study of marsh Arabs, the Dajla, Furat, the two rivers. No. There are people living floating in the water. And Saddam Hussein had bombarded them after the Iran-Iraq war, and they had dispersed into villages. So I undertook with a team a study of the marsh Arab, how their life originated and where they are now. Would they want to come back to their old way of life or not? So we will go around and meet their leaders. And we printed a report, and at the bottom of the report obviously was my name. Mm-hmm. And a copy went to Sergio de Mello, the UN Special Representatives in Baghdad. And when he looked at it, he knew me from when I was working with UN in Islamabad. Mm-hmm. At that time, he had visited and we had worked together. He called me and he said, I didn't know you were in Basra. I said, yeah, it's almost a month I'm here. He said, when are you coming to Baghdad? I said, I'm going to Geneva for my rest and recreation. And he said, when you are back, come and work for me in Baghdad. Right at that moment, I received a cable from Kabul saying that President Krzai wanted me to come to Kabul and become his chief of staff. And I told him also that I'm on my way to Geneva for R&R. And from Geneva, then I received the instruction from UN also, because they were my employers, that I should proceed to Kabul. And when I went to I went to Kabul. I met with President Krzai. I agreed that I will become his chief of staff, and then I said, okay, then I have to go back to Geneva and wind up. And on my way back at Charles de Gaulle, I saw at CNN news, breaking news, that Sergio de Mello has been blown up and he's killed. And that's how I said, well, I survived another assassination attempt. So, but anyway, I started working as chief of staff August 19 of 2003, and that was my first government job. Before that, I had worked with United Nations and international NGOs.
وهكذا نجوت من الموت بأعجوبة. كيف بدأت بعملك؟ على ما ركزت بخطوط عريضة لو سمحت؟
Yes, when I started, because like I said, it was my first government job. But luckily, nobody in the team was experienced in government job. President Krzai also had no previous government job or experience, but I had UN experience and I had NGOs experience. Now, part of my focus was helping Hamid Karzai to ensure national unity, to create national consensus. That was our focus. because creating our national institutions, that was a giant responsibility between Afghans and our international partners. But national unity was our job. They could not do it for us. So that was my top priority, and also implementation of the roadmap of Bonn Agreement. Loya-Jirga in 2002, Loya-Jirga in 2003-4 to approve constitutions, and then elections 2014 for Krzai to be elected, and that's how the process moved on. But my focus was on national unity.
كيف كنت تقرب هؤلاء جميعا؟
Well, first of all, President Krzai was also very good in that area. He was an expert of dealing with tribal elders, with ethnic leaders, with leaders of civil society. So the two of us were complementing each other. And I opened up the doors, with permission of President Krzai, the doors of the presidential palace for people to visit. And President Krzai was meeting at least 500 leaders per week. His lunch was never alone. His lunch was rarely with the staff. His lunch was always with public, with leaders of tribes that were coming from very remote areas of the country, and he was listening patiently. And then I had a system in my office to follow up on that discussion. If leaders of a province raised a concern and President Krzai made a promise, so that had to be followed, that his promise is implemented. So my office was responsible for following that. And when they went back to their villages and they told the rest of the people that they communicated with President, they met with President, and now they see a change on the ground, so they started supporting. And with the big tribal leaders, that's not enough to bring them on your side. You have to sometimes pay them, you have to give them jobs to their sons, you have to give scholarships to their sons. I mean, all sorts of favors you have to give to the top leaders to keep them on your side.
هل صحيح أنه كان في تنافس حتى يعني بالجلوس إلى جانب الرئيس على المائدة بين بعض السياسيين مثل زلماي رسول أو ويحيى معروفي؟
Yes, that was true, because when I first joined him for lunch as chief of staff, and I saw that there was competition within his senior staff to be closer to Krzai, and I wondered why they were doing that. I asked protocol staff, and he said, because this is always a lunch meeting is broadcasted in the national television. And when people see who is sitting close to president, that's the most important person.
لماذا رفض السفير الأمريكي زلماي خليل زاد إنشاء مجلس قيادة يراقب صلاحيات الرئيس أو محكمة دستورية؟
Yes, when we were drafting the constitution, there was an idea that there should be a council of leaders. Leaders such as you mentioned, Professor Rabbani, Professor Sayaf, Professor Mujaddidi, Pir Gilani, and Sheikh Asif Mohsini, Muhaqqiq, all the ethnic tribal leaders, the top one, the first layer, to be members of the council, so that if president exceeds his authority, then the leadership council can stop him. And if president has problem with leading or linking with the population, he has those leaders, and we didn't have parliament by then. Now, Ambassador Khalil Zad rejected that idea, saying this is too similar to Iranian guardianship council, so he rejected it. But then we also came up with another idea, that there should be a constitutional court. So if there is a constitutional issue, who would resolve it? We copied an idea from other countries that a constitutional court may be a good idea. That also he rejected. He said, because we don't want to reduce the president's authority. President should have full authority.
إذا أراد أن يضمن حكما يعني سهلا لكرزاي دون عقبات حول صلاحياته. قلت أنه قضايا خلافية كثيرة نشبت أيام كتابة الدستور، وكان من الواضح لديك أن هناك تدخل أجنبي كبير غير التدخل الأمريكي المعروف والواضح آنذاك. تشير إلى تدخلين روسي وإيراني في ذلك، كيف كان يحصل هذا؟
Yes, there was a commission that was drafting the constitution. And once the draft was approved by the cabinet, it was supposed to go to the lower jirga to give it the final approval. So there were many disagreements during the drafting. But once the draft was approved and it went to the lower jirga, for 5 days the lower jirga debated and agreed on a draft. And every evening in the palace, we were getting report that what changes they have brought. They were not big changes that the cabinet had approved. But on the 5th day, the Secretary General of the lower jirga called me and said, the jirga has agreed, constitution is approved, prepare the president tomorrow to come and give his concluding speech to the lower jirga and hear the final draft of the constitution. So we worked the whole night for president's speech, but in the morning the Secretary General of the lower jirga, he informed me that the jirga is divided. And then later on, much later, when we investigated, it was Iranian and Russian influence that divided the lower jirga. Why Russia? Russia got angry because the day before, one of the jihadi leaders said, we want war compensation from Russia. So they got angry and they got worried. But anyway, during that night, whatever they did, the next day the jirga was divided into two halves. One half was saying that we want the national anthem not only in Pashto and Farsi, or rather in Farsi. And the another question they had was that anyone with dual nationality should not be member of the cabinet at all. And the third objection was I forgot it, but there was a third objection also there. Yeah, so divided. But then discussion went for another 4 days until it was finalized.
كيف عالجت الوجود المفرط للخبراء الأجانب في القصر؟ لأنه كان مثار شبهات وتساؤلات.
Okay, the remaining days of the lower jirga, we put a ban on foreign ambassadors and diplomats from visiting lower jirga. And no one from lower jirga was allowed to contact any embassy. So that was one reason. And then overnight and during the day, we went and talked to the different groups. But I must say there were a couple of leaders who played key role in reconciling. One was Fahim Khan, the vice president, and Karim Khalili, the other vice president. These two played a key role. And Professor Sayaf, one of the Mujahideen leaders, he also played a key role in reconciling the two factions.
نتابع بعد الفاصل معالي الوزير. شكرا لوجودك معنا مجددا. مشاهدينا الكرام، فاصل قصير قبل أن نتابع ما لدينا في هذه الحلقة. أرجو أن تبقوا معنا.
And upon arrival in Camp David, in the first informal chat, President Bush asked President Krzai, said they were calling each other my brother. He said, my brother, do you want the Durand line? And Krzai was caught by surprise with that question. He thought a little bit and then he said, yes, I want it, but I know I can't get it.
أهلا بكم مجددا مشاهدينا الكرام إلى هذه الحلقة من الذاكرة السياسية، نتابع فيها مع محمد عمر داوودزاي وزير الداخلية الأفغاني الأسبق. أهلا بك معنا معالي الوزير مجددا. في أغسطس عام 2007 سيزور الرئيس الأفغاني الأسبق حامد كرزاي الرئيس الأمريكي جورج بوش في كامب ديفيد، وسيكون هناك حديث مطول بينهما عن عدة مواضيع، منها خط ديوراند، منها العلاقة مع باكستان، ومنها كذلك إمكانية ترشحه لولاية ثانية. ما الذي دار في هذا اللقاء؟
That was a very important visit. It was the first and last of Hamid Karzai to Camp David, and in fact, after Hamid Karzai, President Musharraf was also invited to visit Camp David. And upon arrival in Camp David, in the first informal chat, President Bush asked President Karzai, said they were calling each other my brother. He said, my brother, do you want the Durand line? And Karzai was caught by surprise with that question. He thought a little bit and then he said, yes, I want it, but I know I can't get it. because I don't have that much power. And President Bush said to him that, you know, we and the Brits recognize Durand Line as the official border between Afghanistan and Pakistan. And Karzai said, yes, I know that, but we don't, and people of Afghanistan don't recognize it. And then subsequently, in that informal chat, which was introduction of kind of agenda of what was going to come, they discussed the question of elections that was upcoming in 2007, and President Bush's last visit to Kabul, that was also discussed, and some major contribution to reconstruction of Afghanistan was also discussed. So quite a number of issues were discussed, which all of them were important, but they were all discussed in a very informal kind of family setup.
كان هناك طبعا اختلاف حول الرؤية الأمريكية والأفغانية لإيران. كرزاي كان يدعم إيران، أمريكا لا، والعكس بشأن باكستان. ولكن ما مصير الحزمة $5 مليارات التي كانت الولايات المتحدة تنوي إنشاء سدود فيها والعديد من المشاريع، كيف أهدرت من قبل أفغانستان؟
President Karzai had given an interview to CNN at that time, or just recently, in which he defended his friendship with Iran, say it's our neighbor, and we have a lot in common, and we have convergence of interest. And then President Bush was asked during the same visit by a reporter that Hamid Karzai has said this, and President Bush said his usual words. I don't remember what it was, but he was very critical of Iran, which was natural. That's how the Iran-American relationship goes. And President Karzai was trying to distance himself from the Iranian-American tension. So throughout the meeting, the visit, there was a question that President Karzai praised President Bush for contributing, or rather funding, the Kabul-Kandahar road. And he told him that people of Afghanistan pray for you and praise you because 2 days distance is now done in 4 or 5 hours. And President Bush said, I'm glad to see that, but what else can I do? And President Karzai says, electricity, power, we need power. And from what source? He said, dams, we have water, we can build hydro dams. And President Bush said, but how much would that cost? Initially, President Bush said that, no, my brother, for major projects such as dams and railway and motorways, you have to borrow money from World Bank and other sources, and my people would help you on that. And President Karzai said, no, my brother, my people I'm a very traditional person. I don't like to be in debt, and I don't like to take loan. And by the way, people then criticize me and say, what is the friendship of American for that we are borrowing money? And then President Bush asked, say, but how much would it cost? And somebody from the audience, from his team, from Bush team, shouted that $5 billion. And Bush said, well, that's peanut for Americans. And when he said that, President Karzai said that, so that means you agree? And President Bush said, yes. And Karzai said, so can I announce it when I go back? And Bush said, yes. So when we came to Kabul, President Karzai announced it. But in the next day, I had a visit by the then US ambassador, who told me that, yes, President Bush has promised, but there is conditions attached to that. If Ismail Khan continue to be the Minister of Power, we will not fund that. And why? And he said he's very close to Iranians, and he gave contracts to Iranians. And we cannot allow that American money is used by Iranian contractors. So President Karzai asked me to speak as his chief of staff to Ismail Khan, and I did, and he refused to step down. And I actually offered him another ministry. He did not accept that, the Ministry of Public Work. So when I came back, the US ambassador called me and said, I want to see you urgently. So he came. And he said, what did you offer to Ismail Khan instead? I said, Ministry of Public Work. He said, no, we cannot accept that either, because we are funding that ministry also. And he's giving contracts with the same reasons to Iranian contractors, so we cannot accept him. Now, then I suggested to President Karzai that maybe you can appoint Ismail Khan as Minister of Interior. And he did not agree. So anyway, he kept him in the Ministry of Power and we lost the 5 billion.
للأسف خسرت أفغانستان 5 مليارات دولار كانت ستبني سدودا، ولكن هناك سبب آخر لذلك، ليس فقط عدم رضا إسماعيل خان، أيضا سبب متعلق بكرزاي وبانتخاباته المقبلة، وأراد أن يضمن ولاء ودعم إسماعيل خان.
That was a small reason. That was not a very important reason because Ismail Khan had already been in Kabul for many years. And we had done enough work in Herat to have our own basis of influence. So had Ismail Khan turned against Karzai, he would not have impacted election. But Ismail Khan, Gulaga Shirzai, and a number of that caliber of commanders, it was a policy to keep them in capital, not in their own provinces.
خشية على ما يمكن أن يقدموا عليه ربما. لماذا ضعفت حظوة كرزاي عند الأفغانيين في الانتخابات الثانية التي فاز فيها لولاية ثانية في 2009؟
No, his influence was on rise. It was significantly improved. And by 2009, there was a controversy. There was, in 2009, some people were told that the Americans don't like Karzai anymore. And that was helpful in some parts of the country. Say, well, if Americans don't like him, then he is our leader. So it was both sides. And in those circles who were using his tension with Americans against him, we were also propagating, as part of the campaign, and say, no, that's arranged. It's not real. So anyway, I mean, his influence had increased compared to, let's say, 2005 as a national leader. In 2009, his influence had increased. However, his opposition has also got stronger.
عذرا، ولكن ما قصدته أنه من حيث الأرقام ومن حيث التنافس مع المرشح الآخر لم تكن الانتخابات سهلة إطلاقا، ولم يحصل كرزاي على نسب مريحة.
I think he did achieve above 50% in the first round, which was required. But then because of allegations of rigging, 430 boxes were quarantined. And when you quarantine, when those boxes were quarantined, that means they were not part of the counting. His percentage dropped to 49.6 or 0.7%, just 0.3% short of the majority. Now, his second, which was Abdullah, he was below 20%.
ولكن أنت تسمي في كتابك هيئة الانتخابات المفترض أنها مستقلة بهيئة الانتخابات حسب الطلب، بمعنى أنه كرزاي كان له باع كبير في تعيين بعض أعضائها، وبأنه يعني كل كلام كان يوحي بأنه في تزوير حدث في هذه الانتخابات لإيصال كرزاي مرة جديدة.
Yes, there was fear that because of his tension with Americans, some American circles may stop him from being elected. That's why his appointed commission were close friends of him, or at least more members of the commission were close friends of him. In Afghanistan, that's considered as campaign. Now, but also some of his friends did rigging, which I think did not help him because that 430 boxes would not have been quarantined if there were not allegation of rigging.
لماذا اجتمع السفير الأمريكي ريتشارد هولبروك بالرئيس الأفغاني حامد كرزاي بعد الانتخابات مباشرة، ومن ثم يبدو أنه غضب وغادر؟
Yes, it was the next day after election. Vote counting had not started. The U.S. Embassy informed us that Ambassador Holbrooke wants to see Karzai, and we encouraged him to invite him for lunch. And that's what happened. He came, and over lunch, in the middle of lunch, Ambassador Holbrooke said that, President Karzai, would you accept going to a runoff? And President Krzai said, but why should that question is not relevant because the counting has not started. And if people have given me vote, if I have secured over 50%, then that means we do not go to a runoff. If I have not met the required number, then we go for a runoff. Where do you get that question from? He said, well, there has been a lot of rigging. There have been massive riggings. And Krzai said, but where did you hear it from? He said, well, this morning I met Dr. Ashraf Ghani. He alleged. So he's a candidate. So that's where the harsh words were exchanged, and Ambassador Holbrooke left. And in fact, he left the whole job to his deputy. His attendance after that to the election was minimum.
ولكن لماذا خف الدعم الأمريكي لكرزاي في الولاية الثانية؟
It was before the second term because it was President Obama's election. And even before election, during the last year of President Bush, tension began between Krzai and the local US team over the question of civilian casualties, intruding into people's houses in the night because that's against the culture, it was against the law, against the Constitution. But the American forces were still doing that. And that became tension, but during Bush, because his relationship with Bush was strong enough, so it didn't go up, it remained local tension. But when Obama became a strongest candidate, he spoke against Krzai even before his first step. He said Krzai is a president that doesn't come out of bunker. And then he visited as a candidate Kabul. That visit didn't go well. And then his strategy came out. As part of the strategy, there was troop surge, which Krzai didn't mind, but Krzai was advising that please mind civilian casualties. That whole chapter is one reason, the civilian casualty. But there was another reason also. After, when I returned back from Iran as chief of staff, I found a different Krzai. I found a Krzai that was thinking to become a nationalist leader, a leader who can survive without American support. And that was why there was a bit of tension. And Obama
حتى أن كرزاي قام ببعض التعيينات لأشخاص تعتبر يعني لشخصيات تعتبر مناهضة للأمريكيين بسمعتها عموما مثل كريم خرم مثلا وكان هناك رسائل متبادلة في هذا الإطار. أنا يجب أن أقول بأنه عبد الله انسحب من سباق الجولة الثانية لم يرد ذلك وبالتالي تحصل كرزاي على ولاية جديدة ل5 سنوات أخرى ونتابع في بداية الحلقة المقبلة معك معالي الوزير. شكرا لوجودك معنا مجددا. مشاهدينا الكرام هكذا نكون قد وصلنا إلى ختام هذه الحلقة تلفزيونيا إذن وملتقانا يتجدد الأسبوع المقبل مع محمد عمر داوودزاي وزير الداخلية الأفغاني الأسبق. أرجو أن تكونوا معنا. إلى اللقاء.
That was the biggest mistake in the whole peace process, that the Afghan government was excluded. When like I said earlier, the first American Taliban talks started in 2011 in Munich.